Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge and Company. My guest is Gail Benjamin. She was the chair of this year's Charter Commission, and with over 36 years' experience, is one of the city's leading experts in land use issues. She's the perfect guest today because I'd like to talk about both of those subjects.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine.
Thank you for having me today.
You're welcome. So let's start with the charter.
Okay.
This was a busy year for you.
It was quite a busy year. I started back in May of last year, and we're just now rolling to a finish and writing the after action report.
That's great. It's a council initiative.
Correct.
There was another charter commission.
There was a Charter Revision Commission in 2018 that was a mayoral commission.
Right.
And in fact, all of the charter commissions until this one have been appointed by the mayor.
Right. And is this the first, did you make more changes than ever?
We made more changes certainly than last year. Last year there were just 3 changes, as you know. This year we had 5 questions, which encompassed 19 different proposals, all of which were adopted.
That's interesting. You know, I became a council member as a result of charter revision in 1989. And that was a big change.
Correct.
The charter, I think we should say, is like a constitution. It's New York City's constitution.
It is.
Right. So it lays out all the form of government, the responsibilities, and all of that.
Although it has to fit within the state constitution as well as the federal constitution. Okay. We can't kind of go off on our own and declare ourselves independent of them.
Okay. So you had 15 members?
We had 15 members who were appointed by 9 elected officials, which was a first and had its own challenges.
Yeah.
4 of the members were appointed by the council, by the speaker. 4 of the members were appointed by the mayor. Mm-hmm. The other 8 members were appointed by the 5 borough presidents, the public advocate, and the comptroller.
So that embraced the whole governing part of the top of the government.
That is correct.
And you then, how did you do it? You started, so there was a staff.
Yes.
You were the chair of the...
Yes.
Were you a voting member of the charter?
Yes.
Okay. And then, how big a staff do you have?
21, 22 people.
And how were the initial thoughts laid out?
Initially, what we decided to do, and we worked on process first, was that we would seek opinions from people as well as have the staff do their own research on areas in the charter that were not working for the public good as well as they might, or that might not work into the future, since there will be changes in the future. The city is growing again. The population is diverse in a way that was not anticipated. Certainly in 1989, which was the last major charter change, no one anticipated the growth of technologies that have come to be how we all live now. So staff was directed to take a look at all of those issues, and we had a robust website. We had a series of public hearings. We wrote letters and asked for input from each one of the agencies of the city and from their commissioners, some of whom responded, some did not.
How could they not? All right, let's pass that on.
I was going to say something really political.
All right.
And we took all of those ideas and did at least a preliminary run-through. Mm-hmm. After which the staff took a deeper dive into the ideas and packaged them in areas. Meanwhile, the commission debated and discussed what criteria we would use to examine these ideas. And we came up with 5 or 6 criteria, and each idea was run through that matrix. We started out with almost 1,000, although some of them were so close we kind of melded them in.
Mold them, yeah.
And we ended up, after the matrix, with between 44 and 50 separate ideas that met the criteria. Well, they didn't meet the criteria yet, but that we thought were worthy.
To be considered, right.
We then investigated them. We spoke to people. We took ideas. We had expert testimony from people who really knew about these things. Everything we did was open to the public. And the public did come, not in the numbers I may have liked, but the expert testimony was great for both the commissioners and the public to talk about each of these ideas and what they represented. After which, we went through them again to see if we could cull any more, and we did. We then had, with our culled list, we had another round of public hearings on those proposals that made it through.
Were they well attended?
For public hearings these days,
Yeah.
yes, because by and large, the people who come to public hearings are not your ordinary people.
Have interests.
They have an interest or they know something. So I would say it was public attendance was good in that sense, but in terms of the public really coming to be educated or to give us their feelings, it's hard to know how to engage the public. We had a robust Twitter site. We had Facebook.
Tried very hard.
We tried very hard to engage the public in discussions. We had staff who went out to all sorts of places.
Organizations and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
We tried and we learned from that, but it is very hard because they're not issues that the public sees up front as kind of a bread and butter issue, or why should I get involved in this, or even really knows.
It's so symptomatic of, I mean, it's such, the reason is so distant in a way from it, but so terrible about what's happening generally, right? The cynicism and the detachment from the government and the lack of people's
Civic
feeling
mindedness.
that, yes, civic, right, comes back to teaching civics in junior high school.
How does a bill become a law? I
Right.
mean, when I was in high school, we all had to take civics, and the first part was how does a bill become a law?
Absolutely, God, that was all part of it. Anyway, so then you narrowed it down and you put them into 5 questions.
Well, what we did then, which one of the things I'm the proudest of, is that we actually complied with the open meetings law. You know, in most circumstances, there's kind of
Yeah, a wink.
an attempt to comply with it, but that people have smaller meetings outside the forum so that they can privately discuss it. And some of the members of the commission begged. And I said, no, we're going to do this. The Corporation Council in our discussions has instructed me that if the reason we're having smaller meetings is to avoid the open meetings law, it's still a violation of the open meetings law. So we're going to go with having our discussions in public.
Good.
And we did. After that series of meetings, after each meeting, there was discussion time for the commissioners. The first one went on for approximately 2 hours. And after a slow beginning, commissioners really began to discuss their problems with certain of the proposals or with the way it was presented. I thought that was great. And we got a lot of feedback from people who were there, like Reinvent Albany people, that they'd never seen it before. When they heard about it, they weren't sure it was going to work, and that they were really pleasantly surprised.
Great. That's
And then we had our final vote on which ones would actually, the staff recommended, and we had a final vote. There were some changes from what the staff recommended, and we voted, and then we came back and had another vote because one of the members had a change of heart. Well, it's public, so I don't. Carl Weisbrod had originally voted against the proposal for CCRB being allowed to investigate cases of officers who are already before them lying about the charge for which they're before them.
So that went into the right to subpoena witnesses?
No, it actually was part of that question, but it was a separate question, and Carl had originally voted no, and it had not passed. And Carl thought about it and called me 2 days later and said, what do I have to do to change my vote? I've thought about this, I've talked to more people, and I'm really just not feeling good about this. I mean, it was one of those profiles in courage. He went and he talked to the mayor and said, I'm sorry, but I don't think that people should be allowed to lie.
The Civilian Review Board is so controversial time and time again. It's so interesting. I remember having worked for John Lindsay. He had started a Civilian Review Board, and it just brought an outcry of criticism, right?
Well,
and then when
yeah.
I was in the council, I had to have other people front for the bill, because if I had introduced it, I didn't think it would go anywhere. But they did it too. So
yeah, I think it's an interesting organization. I think that in this day and age, we need a body that the public feels they can go to when they believe they've been mistreated or abused
Right.
by an officer, because officers are given a lot of power.
Right.
And they're given a gun. And I would also add that 97% of officers will never be charged, will never appear before.
And many of them will never
CCRB.
fire a gun.
Correct, most
Yeah.
will never fire a gun.
Right.
Or mistreat people before them. So the CCRB is not about the police department, it's about some smaller universe of officers.
It also relieves the executives who make the decision that it's not just up to the mayor or it's not just up to the police commissioner. It takes.
Well, the discipline still is. Under the state law, the police commissioner is the only person who can discipline an officer. So the Civilian Complaint Review Board makes a recommendation to the commissioner, and then the commissioner
Still has to account for overriding it.
Right.
All right, so let's just talk briefly, because we're going to run out of time. The First Amendment had to do with this famous change
In voting.
Yeah.
And what that is that instead of going to the polls and voting for just one person, you will have the option of ranking the people who are running in your primary 1 through 5 according to your preference. You can choose to still just vote for one person if you want to, or 2 or 3 or however many you want to. But what this does is a couple of things. The first is that so many people now are so cynical about the voting process, and that I can't vote for the person I want because they're not going to win. So I've just thrown my vote away and wasted it. So I'll either stay home or I'll vote for someone I don't really care for as much, but they have a better shot. This will allow people to vote for that candidate who they really think is worthy of their vote. And if that candidate does not get enough votes, to have their vote redistributed to their second choice. All of that would be invisible to the voting person. All you know when you go into the voting place is that you have a choice. Anecdotally, it would appear, and I think this is very important to it, that right now where candidates tend to narrowcast their message, whether it's via Twitter or in person, they know the voter who will vote for them, the 5 things that they care about. And so they only go to those voters who have the characteristics, and they only talk about those 5 things that that voter cares about.
So it narrows the.
Right. And this will, in fact, encourage them, because they're going to be after people's second choice votes and third choice votes. So they can't only go to those people.
So we're going to try to merge what's become the, what do you call it, single issue
Right.
thing. Yeah, that's very good.
So we like that, and we like the idea that maybe it would encourage people, more people, to come out and vote. In New York, even in New York, somewhere between 25 and 30% of the registered voters actually come out and vote.
I know, that's the disgrace of the city, I think.
And anything we can do to encourage that, I think, is something we need to do.
It also eliminates the second election.
Yes, there will
Which is very
which
important.
is financial, as well
Yeah,
as
right.
the fact that even smaller amounts of people turn out for the runoff. The Board of Election estimates that there are going to be between 4 and 10 candidates for each one of the council seats that's coming up.
That's because we're putting in how many new 30?
Right now, I think it's 37. But you can look at the race
Out of
for the-
51, let's
yeah,
tell
out
everyone.
of the public advocate race, where there were, 14 candidates in the primary? Actually, it wasn't a primary, it was a
Special election.
special.
Yeah. Well, and that was, the special election also was included in that first
Yes.
article. But they were less things. It extended time if somebody, for
Right.
campaigning.
The other
and all
ones
that
are
kind of thing.
more technical in nature.
Right. And the Second Amendment was
The Second Amendment is the CCRB Amendment.
CCRB, so we've covered that.
Right.
The Third Amendment,
The Third Amendment was an attempt to try and rebalance slightly the balance of power between different offices in the city by giving the other electeds independent budgets. Right now, the public advocate and the borough presidents are basically tied to the mayor. And there was some thinking and there were some examples given of when the mayor has tried to punish them.
Giuliani.
Giuliani and others.
I wanted to say Giuliani.
But definitely Giuliani
Yeah.
did punish them.
If they feel they're going to give them trouble, they reduce their budget so they have lower staff and they can't do as much. Right.
Correct.
Okay.
So
That was one. Then
we've proposed that all of those entities and the CCRB, for different reasons, have a guaranteed minimum budget, which if the mayor can show that he can reduce, only if he can show it's part of a citywide plan. So if we run into another fiscal crisis, they're not held exempt, but he has to show that they're also not being targeted.
then there were ethics questions.
Yes,
Can't lobby.
it changed from 1 year to 2 years when a high official or an elected official is no longer in office, how long they have to wait before they can appear before their agency. It changed some of the rules for the Conflict of Interest Board about who appoints them, and also how they can contribute to political campaigns.
And then it added the corporation council, the mayor's appointment has to be approved by the council.
Right.
Okay. Then we come to the land use,
Yes.
number 5. That's your field.
Well, it's two small changes, but ones that the community boards, many community boards came and spoke very eloquently on the fact that one, during the summer, many community boards don't meet, and when projects are certified into ULURP in June, many times they can't review them. So we added additional time in when a project is certified in June or July to make sure that the boards can fulfill the purpose for which they are there. And then we also allowed for a 30-day period at the beginning of the ULURP process, before it's certified, when the application would go to the community board for a pre-review. Now, you're from Manhattan, and in your community boards, many times this happens, the developers in Manhattan, in Midtown, they're a small group of people. They know the process, they know how to do it, and they're at the community boards when they first start thinking
And they
of
know
buying
how
the property.
the community board can really derail them.
Right. And so in Manhattan, this
Yeah.
happens
Yeah.
already, but in other community boards, the developers don't come to them beforehand. The first they may know of the project is when they receive it from city planning. So we've given them an extra 30 days in order to review it and do kind of their due diligence.
Good. Now, my question, and it's going to lead into our another subject. So thank you. It was voted on. The only bad part about it was how few people voted. And
That is true, although I
what
will
was
say that
interesting
it was,
is there was so little discrepancy between voting for the only candidate, basically, the public advocate, and the people who voted for the amendments, which there was very little drop-off.
right, but I would also
That's a
say
good
that there
sign.
was the public advocate was the only thing on
Yeah.
the ballot. Last year in the mayor's commission, only 300,000 and something people voted. So we did better
You
than
had
that.
700 and something.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining about the commission at all. I'm just complaining back to the civics class. The lack of, it's not interest, it's just the sense that it's important to the people in the city to vote.
And
they
that it
don't
matters.
have that sense.
People don't think that their vote matters. I talk to many people, and they just don't feel that their vote And in one sense, they're right. One vote doesn't matter.
But together they matter.
Right. But that's, I think, in this time of individualism, et cetera, that's a very foreign idea that my vote by itself doesn't matter. But it's not by itself, because there are 8.5 million New Yorkers, 5.5 million Sikhs are eligible to vote, and together we can do something.
It's so shocking to me, and I think after we watch how the federal government is behaving, even more people are going to feel detached from it. I don't know, that's another problem. But ULURP, how many people in the city know what ULURP is?
Well, I would hope everyone on a community board, all the people who work for the
how
plan.
many people even know about a community board?
Not that many.
Right.
It's another one of the arcana of government that started out as a
great thing,
but has been reduced to a small club. I have many thoughts about ULURP and how it works, but essentially ULURP was a way to gather public opinion.
Say what it stands for.
Uniform Land Use Review Procedure, which is section 197 C and D of the Charter. And basically what it does is, in discretionary land use decisions like zoning changes or special permits or site selections, it allows for involvement on the local level. The community board gets 60 days to review it, by the borough president, who gets 30 days, by the city planning commission, who have 60 days, must hold the public hearing, and if they approve it, it then goes to the city council for 50 days, where they can approve, disapprove, or modify. And if they modify, they have to send it back to city planning. But all told, it's, I think, a 210-day process by which input is sought and compromises are reached.
And it isn't only developers of real estate to make money, it also pertains to museums, school, everything, right?
Yep, not-profit housing. It pertains to all discretionary land use decisions, of which there are many.
My daughter was a member of what's called the ANC in the District of Columbia, the Advisory Neighborhood Council.
Oh, I thought you meant the ANC.
I know, that's
in
how
South Africa.
That's how I always remember what it is. I think South Africa. And she's elected. So she was on the ballot when Obama was elected. She was at the bottom. He was at the top. But I wonder how much a difference that would mean. I don't know. Because in the parties, it doesn't really mean any different when people are elected to the county committees, right?
I'm not sure that having people elected is any more representative these days, particularly if so few people are voting. I mean, I go back to the school boards when we voted for the school boards, and very few, or the anti-poverty boards, and very few people actually voted. I look at the judicial candidates, which more people are affected by, and my husband refuses to vote on them because he doesn't know anything about them, and they're running on 3 or 4 lines. He says, how can they be a Republican, a Democrat, a liberal, and a conservative?
I was elected as a delegate just last year, or 2 years ago. I've never been to a judicial convention. I did somebody a favor by running. I was appalled. If you ever want to see how the political organizations control a process, that's it. People would be nominated, this person nominated, give a speech, and then the person accepts it and gives a speech, and then they say, but it's not my turn, so I withdraw my name. And guess whose turn it is? The political chief. Anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
So I'm not sure that electing the kind of community board would make a difference. And I think it would be in contrast to, there were 59 community boards and 51 council members. So pretty much it would be in contrast to their elected officials who were voting at the end of the process. If you also elected the community board, I think it would be the possibility for...
It would make no difference. That's true. And then people would complain. We haven't had enough time to talk about land use, but when I knew you were coming, all I could think of is, so you're going to have to come back.
Okay.
I want to know, when did people start owning the land? I don't know what the FCC does now, but the airwaves belong to the public. You have to be licensed to use them. And I know there are all different ways, England, but think about that. It goes way back, doesn't it?
Yes.
And it all feeds into the feudal system and everything else.
And it feeds
rich and
into,
powerful.
I would just say offhand, it feeds into when we began to, instead of hunt and gather, when we began to domesticate animals and raise them in one place.
Right. All right, you're coming back to talk about
Absolutely.
that. We've come to an end. But
Is that
thank
really
you
half
so
an hour?
Yes, we have. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was quite fun.
And I'm glad that you really were the chair of the commission, because I know you did a great job.
I tried.
Good.
You know, not everybody was
I know.
happy with me.
Oh, stop. Anyway, thank you.